There we go. All righty, and you're up.
Luz. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to turn off my screen. So center stage is on our ASL interpreter. Okay. So
Give me a
for
second to
those
share
of
the
you,
screen. I'm sorry, Ian.
sure.
I'm running a little behind. Let me see.
No worries.
All right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. That's on the wrong. Gosh, my apologies, everyone. Let's here. Okay,
Perfect.
go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Luz. So for those who are unable to attend previous outreach events for the Sunvan COA, in this presentation, we're going to provide some background information on why we're doing a COA for paratransit and what the COA involves. We're also going to talk about findings from our service analysis and peer city report, as well as what we heard from the first survey, which was conducted in spring and summer of last year. And then we're going to conclude with some draft recommendations, which are split into short-term and long-term recommendations. And we have a brief survey at the end to gather your feedback on these recommendations. All right, and so as a refresher, or for those that are unfamiliar with Sunvan, Sunvan is Tucson's shared ride public paratransit service for people who have a disability that prevents them from using a Suntran bus or the Sunlink streetcar. We have a process to determine eligibility for using Sunvan, and Sunvan is provided to all locations within 3/4 of a mile of a Suntran or Sunlink route during the same time period that those services operate. We also operate a premium service, which is often referred to as optional service. You may know it as optional service, that is offered outside the required service area and for hours outside requirements when available. Next slide. So this map shows the area covered by the complementary service area for the city of Tucson in pink, as well as complementary service areas for Pima County in green and other jurisdictions. So the pink and the green are the core service areas for Sunvan. And the blue area is where we provide that premium or optional service that is not technically required by law, as it isn't near a Suntran or Sunlink route, but is still within the city of Tucson limits. So what is a COA? So the purpose of a COA is to evaluate current Sunvan services and policies, to identify opportunities for improvement, and propose recommendations for service improvements to better serve Tucson residents. Now, it's worth noting the Sunvan COA complements the Suntran COA, or the bus service COA, which was completed last year and made service recommendations for the city's bus network moving forward. The COA is a partnership between the City of Tucson, RATP Dev, which operates Sunvan and Suntran, and our transit consultant who is helping out with the project, TMD. And Luz mentioned we do have staff here from Sunvan, Sean, and I think maybe Stephanie as well, are in this meeting and can help answer questions at the end. I will say we started the COA last spring with the first round of community meetings and a survey. And then last fall, we completed a peer review and the site analysis, the Sunvan analysis. And this spring, we're gonna incorporate your feedback on the recommendations that we've drafted to develop a final report. And that'll be developed this summer before taking the plan to mayor and council. As part of the service evaluation for Sunvan, we conducted a peer review of a dozen paratransit agencies at various cities that have similar ridership, service area, and population. And when compared, we found that when compared to peer cities, Tucson has a larger portion of the transit budget being spent on paratransit, has higher numbers of riders per capita, has a similar rate of productivity, or people served relative to cost, and is a cost-effective service. So the average Sunvan ride costs less to operate. On the other hand, Sunvan was found to have lower on-time performance and higher customer cancellations than most peers. So this peer review goes into a lot more detail than you see here. We just have one slide on this here. So if you want to find more information on the peer review and really dive in on how we compare to these 12 agencies you see on the right, then you can go to suntran.com/sunvanCOA, which is linked in the chat. So the service evaluation also found that ridership and the number of applications has stayed about the same over the past few years, going back to 2019, despite the impact from COVID and continued free fares. So through interviews with eligibility office staff and customers, the medical verification process has been found to be a bit overly complicated, which has resulted in some suggestions we have for improvements that we'll discuss shortly. The evaluation of the reservation system found that calls tend to take longer than necessary. Many service agencies make multiple trip reservations per call. Trip negotiation is not always used, and pickup times tend to be rounded to every 5 minutes, all of which add up to longer calls and service delays. As I mentioned, Sunvan is not currently meeting on-time performance goals, which are lowest during peak periods such as 9 to 11 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. The amount of time passengers spend on Sunvan trips versus a corresponding Tran trip exceeds the city's policy about 15% of the time on weekdays. Additionally, while helpful for customers, the 5-minute callouts that dispatchers provide takes away time from critical tasks when the dispatchers could be helping with other dispatch services. Next slide. So I'm not sure if any of you filled out the first survey, which was last year. We had that open for a couple months. We received around 900 responses. And the findings echoed what we heard from the service evaluation, that the system is doing very well on cost, comfort, and safety, but is not meeting expectations for on-time performance and ride scheduling. Notably, respondents were unsatisfied with the ability to schedule a ride when you want it, which was also rated as very important for users. Next slide. And related to this desire for same-day scheduling, about 37% of Sunvan clients use rideshare companies such as Uber or Lyft for this purpose, and about half say that they would use a Sunvan affiliated rideshare service if it was offered. So for our draft recommendations, we first want to just highlight some items that are considered kind of low-hanging fruit, short-term ideas. Some of these we've already started implementing. This includes better tracking and enforcement of the no-show policy, fixing some basic problems with software, particularly with the eligibility process, and then setting standards for lowering call hold times. A few other more immediate ideas include updating call taker and dispatcher training and hiring additional drivers. And in fact, in the past year, the number of drivers has returned to pre-COVID levels. I think it might be back down a little bit below that again right now. Perhaps Sean can weigh in on that, but these are ideas that we are already moving forward on in various ways. Okay, and then we have about 10 to 15 key recommendations for which we're requesting feedback. These include, under eligibility, simplify the medical verification form and require applicants to provide with the rest of the application for faster processing. Under reservations, offer negotiated trip times. So if rides are requested during peak travel times, an alternative may be suggested to improve on-time performance. provide pickup windows to the minute rather than rounding to every 5 minutes. So while this may sound like a minor change, exact pickups can reduce the delays on the system over the course of many rides and throughout the day. And then lastly, limit to 4 trip reservations per call to reduce phone lines getting jammed up and to reduce the hold time. And then, I'm sorry, lastly, yeah, implement voice or automated response or text options for where's my ride calls for faster response and to free up reservation staff for other calls. And then under operations, implement automated voice response and or texting for callouts. So when riders are notified that their ride will be arriving in 5 minutes, dispatch callers will be freed up to better monitor that service. And then change onboard comparability to set a more specific goal that's more in line with FTA's guidance, so that less than 5% of trips on Sunvan take longer than their equivalent trip on Suntran plus 25 minutes. Currently, more than 15% of trips exceed this standard. So as mentioned previously, the city of Tucson offers premium or optional service, which is outside the required service area and outside the required service hours, which does impact on-time performance for the core paratransit trips that are required by ADA. Therefore, we suggest temporarily narrowing this premium service to non-peak times. So that would be before 7 a.m., between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and then after 7 p.m. on weekdays, until that on-time performance and on-board time for the basic service meets those standards. And standards being about 90 to 91% on time. So we are also recommending negotiation for premium trip rates with social service agencies or to limit calls the same as with other trips. And then we're also looking into a pilot program for what is being called a new mobility choices program, which would allow existing Sunvan clients to use rideshare and ADA accessible ride providers for same-day service and trips outside the Sunvan complimentary service area. This would require a fee to cover the cost of running a new mobility choices program, which may be $15 for any distance or $12 if trips are limited to 8 miles or less. And these are just numbers that we're suggesting at this point, and we'd like to get feedback on those. So we'd be curious, would you be willing to pay that amount for that service, or do you have other thoughts on this or any of the other recommendations that we've gone through? Please let us know. We do have a brief 10-question survey that's linked at the link in the chat at suntran.com/sunvancoa. We also have on there additional information about future events, some of our reports and updates on the COA can be found there. And we'll be posting the overall draft findings there, the findings from this round of outreach, and the findings from our current survey on that website soon as well. So this wraps our presentation for today. Again, please let us know if you have any questions, and we appreciate your support and participation.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, go ahead and just do a little, if you see a little hand raise, or if you want to unmute yourself and start asking questions, we'll take them as they come.
Thank you for your presentation, and I do appreciate this service because it's very difficult to get around Tucson in any situation these days. And I was not aware of the new mobility choices. I do believe that having the options for different kinds of funding is helpful to people. I haven't really understood the premium trips and so forth, so I'll have to research that. But my main issue with being disabled and this goes not just for the Sun van, but riding in any vehicle it's so painful because of the road conditions. And I've actually participated in some community meetings trying to see what the city is going to do to coordinate the funding and the priority of not blocking off so many streets at once and then having all the traffic in one area, which I would imagine if it was an issue for me when I had a car, that for the Sun van, I think that would be really hard to predict the times, which is why we're given such a large window of pickups and drop-offs to be on the safe side. So to me, coordinating on the broader, with the broader government entities that are involved, because when I've gone to meetings, it wasn't just me, but people were confused, especially the difference between RTA, Grant Road, the planning department and the roads planning. And so that's pretty much my main concern, is that there is more communication in the overall plan and not just making nice slides and giving lip service that don't apply to real life.
Yeah, well, I appreciate those comments and thoughts, and I can understand how road condition would definitely impact comfort on a ride like Sunvan. And yeah, we do work, I'm within the Department of Transportation, and we do work directly with other departments within DTM or other divisions, such as the multimodal group. So, we do get feedback on kind of where sidewalks are needed, for instance, and kind of improving sidewalk connectivity to both bus stops, and then just in general to create better accessibility throughout neighborhoods. And so if there are sidewalks, those are kind of things that we can really pinpoint for future priorities. The road network is currently being resurfaced. So every residential street in the city is being resurfaced as part of Prop 411. So, and I forget the exact time frame for that. I think it's maybe 10 years, but you may have noticed there's a lot of work underway on that, which will hopefully improve conditions on the streets, at least within the neighborhoods. So yeah, hopefully we're not just offering lip service and are trying to coordinate to make real improvements every day. Thank you.
I didn't mean that as a criticism. I really appreciate
I
your
understand.
service.
I understand.
But it is very frustrating when you're trying to get somewhere and there's not even signs to tell you where to detour, and that they're doing adjacent streets, parallel streets, all at the same time.
Right.
And I just wonder who is scheduling this. And the other thing that I'm concerned about, and I don't know how this is integrated, but I'm going to bring it up every chance I get, because our main need in Tucson and the world is water and waste management. And I'm just wondering if someone can keep tabs and that ask questions about the coordination of the maintenance and repair of the sewer systems along with the road systems, so they're not trying to tear up the roads 10 different times. But I don't know about anybody else, but I've been concerned about water since I moved to the desert over 40 years ago. And so that's another issue. Since you said that you coordinate with people, I'm just bringing it up because we're here. So, because it is related in the sense of everything's under there somewhere.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And then another issue is I have had to use the bus more because of not having a car anymore. Well, I mean the van, and even just bringing I have to bring extra cushions to not be totally made worse by the ride. And I mean, even in a car, like I said, it's bumpy because of the streets, but every driver that I've mentioned it to says that they're having back problems too, even the younger ones. So I think that's something to consider for our employees that are on the front lines, to take care of their health as well. So one did mention to me that they are scheduled to replace the vans. And when I first started riding vans, they did have an option for sometimes using of a car, which to my mind must be less expensive than those big vans. Even though the steps are difficult, I try to save the lift for someone else unless I need the walker or the wheelchair, because I heard somebody was stuck because they couldn't get on or off the bus because the lift had broken. So, I mean, those are things too that are going to affect those things that you mentioned, like timeliness and so forth. Also, for reservations, um, there is sometimes a really long hold, and having to listen to that same menu over and over without a bypass can be really tedious and annoying, because even sitting to make reservations is painful for me. So just the option of being able to make multiple reservations at one time is good. And I know that I think no shows should be penalized, but if someone has to cancel an appointment because they're sick or because of somebody else canceling an appointment on them or whatever, um, I think that should be taken into consideration in the long run.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think, yeah, I really like the idea for the cushions, and I don't know, Sean, if you can weigh in if there's, any opportunity for improving comfort on the vans, what can be done there. But that is excellent. It's all excellent feedback, so appreciate that.
Thank you. Tanya, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I do.
Thanks for waiting.
Thank you. So I was curious on how the Uber and Lyft, why would I go through Sunvan to schedule a ride with Lyft or Uber versus just calling myself? What would be the benefit of going through Sunvan?
Yeah, so it potentially wouldn't just be Uber and Lyft. It would also be rideshare companies that have ADA accessibility. So the city could issue what's called a request for proposals from different companies that could meet specific needs that we would have for people with disabilities. And so there would be that benefit. It would also be coordinated with Sunvan and Sunvan clients, so that some of the clients that are currently using the core services potentially could use this service and take some pressure off of the core service for Sunvan. And so there's kind of dual benefits there. It also would have a flat fee. And so if somebody is going potentially a longer distance, it could be more worthwhile to take this service versus just directly contacting Uber or Lyft.
So how would that work? If I'm calling to schedule a ride and you guys aren't able to take me the time that I want to go, you would offer that service to me? I mean,
Yeah, so
you
this
would
would be potentially for same day service or for
same day.
service. Yeah. So right now, you can't obviously you can't
do a same day.
schedule same day service ride.
Okay.
Or for outside the service area. So that is that core kind of area that's in pink that's within 3/4 of a mile of Suntran or Sunvan. Or I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Sunlink.
I do use my son lives in Rita Ranch, so whenever I go out to him, it's considered optional.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Margot, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and then ask your question?
My question has to do with the 4 rides at one time and how you define a ride. So is that going someplace and coming back for those, or going one place as one ride, coming back as the next ride? So you actually have only 2 trips that you could schedule at one time, and why you pick such a small number, because you can't even do a week within that time. You couldn't do 5 days worth of ride within the 7 days that we're usually given that we can schedule ahead.
Okay, yeah, that's really good feedback to know. That was a number that had been suggested from our consultant, and had been kind of discussing that we thought that would be a good kind of just reasonable number when a lot of people are calling in, or when service agencies are calling for multiple rides, and it can, we've heard from Sean that it can, kind of clog up the phone lines for 30 minutes sometimes. So yeah, it's not, like I said, not set in stone. So if you think that there's a number there that we should be looking at that may make more sense, let us know, and I can reach out to TMD and get back in touch with you.
Well, I think the thing is that there's a difference between an individual calling for a ride for one person, for themselves, or for one person to whom they're the caretaker, between a group home, which
Right.
maybe has 3 people in the home, and an agency who's scheduling 10 people at one time to go on a trip. So, those are very different kinds of people. And it seems to me you need much more nuance than just saying 4 rides, because for an agency trying to schedule 10 people, 4 rides means they're going to have to get 4 people, then they're going to have to hang up, then they're going to have to call again, which is, you want to get them all on the same van. So, I mean, I think you need to really think through what that number is and have much more nuance in terms of, as I say, the context in which those rides are being requested. I mean, I know when I was scheduling rides for an individual, I would, schedule 4 days in a row, which would be 8 rides. So it would be extremely inconvenient to have to make 2 phone calls for that one individual within this. I mean, even the 7-day period sometimes is really annoying, but I understand you're only scheduling so far in advance. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's my
helpful.
major feedback on that. And I think the
Okay.
questions about Uber and Lyft are really good. How would that be? What are the logistics in handling that? I think making it for the same day rides, perhaps more. I know there are times when I've tried to schedule rides on the same day for a variety of, emergency issues or other kinds of things along that line, to be then said, well, here's a lift, for this amount of money. Because if you're not signed up on Lyft, it seems very mysterious how to do it. And I would be also somewhat concerned, whoever the people are, if they've gone through the same kind of vetting, I guess. By that I mean the drivers, so that we're sending very vulnerable people on these particular vans or particular cars, and I would think that we would want to have assurance that our people are safe on them.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great
So
point.
that's my comments.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to, we'll look more closely at the rides, the number of rides that would really make sense of the conversation. And then, yeah, the mobility choices program, those details we're definitely going to have to work out, over several months,
Sure.
most likely. But the feedback is great. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead. I don't have your name. I just have an A and a G. So A and a G, go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is Amy Grace, and yeah, just even setting up Zoom is a challenge. So
Great, Amy. Thank you.
over the years, I've had my grandson help me set up Uber, and another friend set up Uber, and another, and it is so difficult sometimes. Sometimes if your credit card expires, they won't take your payment, and you're stranded. That happened to me before, and then I started using gift cards, and that's working better. But it's hard to predict how much the ride is going to be. So having an account like with Sunvan, where if it's an emergency, you know that you have enough money in there because because you've already paid for it. The other issue is, I agreed with the idea of the privacy and the security of different kinds of drivers. I had a friend who ordered an Uber for her daughter, and the driver got there and she was going to work and they wouldn't pick her up because she was Black. And that was really, that really upset me. So even though I'm not, it's just like, wow, that's just awful to do that to anybody in these supposedly enlightened days in Tucson. So, you know, there's not going to be a perfect system, but I think that there's also a lot of different kinds of insurance that provide some of the medical rides that should take some of the burden off if people have that available. I know that that was an issue for my daughter because you had to schedule 72 hours in advance, and that's really hard for people to predict sometimes. I did want to say, back to the other idea of the consultants giving an idea, you know, and again, the city, people in the city that are telling people that, you know, about buses and all these, you know, that have never actually personally ridden on any of them themselves. I question that. I have always been of the opinion that if someone's making a rule about something, they should have personal experience. But I used to be a teacher, so I used to say people making laws for teachers should see what it's like just one day in the classroom before telling people. So just an example. But I like what the other nice lady said about trips. Ultimately, it would definitely take less time to make multiple reservations because every time you have to hang up and get a new person, they have to ask you all the qualifying questions and about your account and about your address. And if you're making multiple trips from the same address, you know, I think that's more important than the number of requests on a call. So again, someone that's just looking at it as statistics on a piece of paper may not have ever gone through the process. As one of your wonderful people that take reservations, I'm very thankful for the wonderful people that I've talked with. They're very patient and understanding of people with disabilities. I also want to really give kudos and thanks to all the drivers. Every driver that I've had has been courteous and respectful and patient and gracious, and just I think that you guys are doing a fabulous job.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, you know, Sean and I don't know if Stephanie's still on, but Sunvan folks are on as well. So
No, and let me speak on part of the reservation. You know, in order for the group settings, we have asked those group homes to email us when it comes to a large amount of travelers traveling, where it does cut down our call times. Unfortunately, right now we're experiencing high numbers of calls due to free rides. So that's over stimulating our reservationists as well. But we do ask those group homes and those programs to email my reservation supervisors to where they can set up those rides via email. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't listen and they still call in and they want to book 12 people or large rides over the phone, which does tie up my call takers or my reservationists for about 45 minutes, maybe even longer, which does tie up the phone line. So I apologize for that. Unfortunately, we are working with the group homes and the programs to make it a little easier on everybody to where we can make our call times a little bit shorter and more efficient.
thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, just to speak also. Hi, I'm Sean, Assistant General Manager. I just wanted to chime in a little bit on the vans. I think it was Ms. Grace mentioned, you know, the vans are bumpy and for riders and drivers, and smaller vehicles will be more efficient and that kind of thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The smaller vehicles we have found in the past were fairly efficient. We had smaller sedans for a while and minivans. But we did have challenges with those vehicles in that they were not accessible vehicles. So we find that if we operate accessible vehicles that have a wheelchair lift, we have a much better chance of moving trips around on the same day of service to routes that have vehicles with that are accessible versus vehicles that are not. Much easier for dispatch. It's much better in terms of options in that regard. And it also, we are to be an accessible service overall. And so we find that it's more efficient in terms of also scheduling numbers of people. We can fit 8 ambulatory people on a cutaway, we call them, one of the large vans with a lift. Or we can, carry a combination of persons and mobility devices and ambulatory people. So it seems to be better. But to your point, Ms. Grace, they are bumpy. We understand that, and we do have an issue with the city streets at times as well. In certain neighborhoods, lots of potholes, speed humps, you name it. Even chunks of pavement missing here and there. So it makes for a very bumpy ride for the individual. And so we do train our operators to do their best in handling those situations. And yet, as you mentioned, it is a challenge. It is a challenge because the suspensions on the vehicles aren't always what we would like them to be. Some of the newer vehicles have a different suspension. The 800 series and 700 series should have a better suspension, a little more softer ride than the older 500 vehicles. We are pulling those out of service in the near future because we have 50 new vans we are taking delivery on and plus 5 electric vehicles. In fact, 2 will arrive tomorrow in Tucson. And so they are accessible as well, the 5 electric vehicles. We're excited to get them and put them in service. We are just at this point in the process of waiting upon radio installations and tablet mounts and so on for our tablets that we utilize. So, but we're excited to put those into service and pull those 500s out of service, as well as the transit vans, the ones that are not accessible. We have 20 of those currently, so we're going to be pulling those out of service also. Long story short, we'll have everything in the vehicle will be accessible before too long.
Thank you for that update. That's good to know. But again, not just as a utilizer, but also looking at the overall budget and efficiency for the future, keeping those smaller ones available, I think is still a viable alternative, because there are a lot of people like myself that just can't walk very far at a time and need, to not have to have somebody with them to push them in their wheelchair. And also with the heat, to have to be at a bus stop forever. Even when I was young and took the bus all the time. And I don't know, since this is part of one of the biggest issues I had in trip planning back in the day was that the bus stops don't list which buses stop. And some of the routes are very confusing and were confusing to me 40 years ago. So in other cities, I've noticed that they just do that, and it makes it so much easier to make sure you're at the right stop. So that might also encourage certain people to be able to take the bus more easily. And I know that there's a lot of different disabilities, but most of the time when I've been on the van on the vans, even they have lifts, but I haven't seen one person that needed to use the lift or have a wheelchair on there. So I know I'm not the only person that has a disability that doesn't, thank God at this point, maybe in the future, require it. Also, like I said, a lot of the medical vehicles that I see around town are like the SUVs where you can very easily fit a wheelchair for people that can get in and out. So I think having those as an option is still a more cost-effective alternative for the city, for everybody, not just thinking about us that need it, but for the overall budget. And comfort, yeah, cars are more comfortable for me. FYI.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Grace. You know, at some point, the city may opt to implement non-accessible vehicles. We can do so if we don't compromise the ADA service to those needing a lift. So it is something the city could look at in the future. I'm not in a position to speak for them, but certainly, you know, that could be something in the future as well.
Anything else? Any other questions? I will add a reminder, please, if you haven't already, fill out the Sunvan survey. It is at the link in the chat. And if you have any questions as you're going through the survey, don't hesitate to reach out. We do have an FAQ that provides a bit more detail. That's actually going to be posted to the website tomorrow because we have heard some feedback that some of the questions are confusing. So we're trying to add a little more explanation for those questions.
Excuse me, may I say something?
Yes, of course.
One thing that is very frustrating, and it seems to have started at the time of the pandemic, and legitimately so, but a lot of the seats, if you're sitting on the outer seat, do not have armrests anymore. And there are drivers who go around corners like they're running a race. And you've got nothing to hold on to because there's no armrest on either side of you. And they're sitting in a much more comfortable seat, even though it's not perfect. Doggy, stop. And I'd just like to say that, first of all, we only have a lap belt. We don't have a safety belt. And, you know, that combined with no armrest is really, really challenging sometimes. I've had drivers just race around corners. And, you know, those U-turns, once in a while, they have to do a U-turn. And if they're doing it really fast, we're hanging on for dear life. I've had to hang on to the seat. So I just want to make that comment because I don't think anyone has addressed that at all. We're getting new vans. Are they going to have armrests? Or are we going to be bouncing around again?
Yeah, that's a really good comment, Ms. Dippold. And you're right. The vans we currently have in our fleet, most of them do not have armrests anymore, and it's part of the procurement process. It could have been something that was overlooked on the recent vans that we have implemented. So I'll certainly take your comment to heart, and we can certainly be thinking about that for future procurements.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that comment too, because I was thinking what she said about the pandemic and, you know, germs. And I do sometimes wonder about the cleanliness. That is one issue. And I know that can't totally sanitize everything all the time, but sometimes there is kind of a really bad odor in some of the vans. And I mean, I wear my mask and I bring my own sanitizer. I use like my jacket to touch the handrail and so forth, but it does make me uncomfortable. But I'm like that anyway, everywhere. You know, I bring my own wipes because they don't always have them at the stores, and I cannot afford to get sick. It's just worth it. So, but what she said too about the issue of the type of driving style and feeling pressured to get somewhere. I mean, we've all felt pressured to get to an appointment on time, no matter who we are and where we live. And at some point, because of accidents, for whatever reason, and I think that safety and all that should always be the first priority and concern. And I'll be the first to say, when I do drive, I drive like a little old lady, and I have to try to, drive around the potholes. And of course, in a van, you can't do that as easily, but it's very scary to try to be safe out there. And so there's the health safety as well as the traffic safety, and that it's really, really noisy as well. So I saw something about Spotify, which I didn't understand, but part of my disability with fibromyalgia is just the noise levels are already so high, and to try for the drivers to try to talk, or us to talk to them and provide a nice shortcut or something, it's very difficult. And a long time ago, this hasn't happened recently, but it reminded me when she talked about taking corners. Um, Sometimes, if they're not able to hear the GPS and they're even glancing at it, I had one driver that had to slam on the brakes because he was looking down at that tablet. So I think that knowing the route ahead of time, GPS is valuable, but as a driver myself, knowing the landmarks and the traffic patterns as best as possible is always a good defensive driving um, maneuver.
Yeah, those are really good comments. The one about the one you just made about drivers glancing down at their tablets or being distracted. We've recently installed a camera system in the vans that captures incidents in real time as they're occurring and gives us real time notifications at base when a driver is looking at the tablet, distracted, or using their phone or things like that. So that system was installed recently and within the last few months, and we have seen driver patterns improve. I can say we've had some issues. We've had to talk with a number of drivers about those habits because that's part of the whole system and making the system safer. In agencies where those types of cameras have been introduced, they've seen safety improved markedly. So we're hopeful for the same thing. We're already seeing good results. But you're right. We want our drivers to be as safe as possible, and we heavily invest in that because we realize that's the name of the game. Out there, it's not just getting places on time, which we want to do. We want to do our level best, but it's also getting there safely. So, thank you for that comment.
Excuse me, I have one more short comment. As passengers, we really can't see out the window and see the upcoming bumps and problems. And sometimes there are speed bumps, and the driver just goes over them, and we bounce around like little cargo. And if he just tell us there's a bump coming up, or please hang on, we've got a speed bump coming. See, we can't anticipate it. And sometimes we just get jostled, If they were to, when they are trained, if they just think of that once in a while, that would be so helpful.
It's a great thought. I'll pass that along to our trainers. Thank you for that.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
If I
For your
can
feedback, Luz, do you have any
bring up
comments?
something.
Joseph is trying to talk. Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I didn't step on anyone, I'm new to Sunvan, although I'm a Tucson native, but I just came back from spending from about 1988 until April 4th in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we have a very dissimilar system there. And the same type of vans, the same problems, like with the vans, noisy streets, truck holes, etc. The one thing that really helped me was that I had to go 3 times for reasons that people lost something or information was not told to me that should have been, I had to go to the Arizona DMV to trade in my Tennessee driver's license for Arizona. And I got lost in the pickup system on coming back home. And lo and behold, it was after 4 p.m. the Tucson time. And I was so excited, almost thrilled to see a Sun van driver pull in. I inquired, hey, I've been forgotten, or I thought I was. And he was so gracious. He was so professional. He called in. He using the Motorola communications mic, and dispatch said, "Oh no, sorry about that." So I was picked up in due time. Fine. Um, my my suggestion is that after 4 p.m., it's very hard to get through to dispatch, and yell, "Help! I'm sorry, I'm stranded. What has happened?" If there was some way on the automated call system that maybe one number, hopefully one, punch number, like push 8 if you are, how to say, in a dire straits and you must speak to the dispatch. Hopefully something like that would not be misused, of course. We wouldn't want that to happen, but it might be something that after 4 p.m., especially if there is a problem, the caller, quote me, or the passenger, might be able to push like 8 or 9 or whatever. So that would signify help, I'm stranded somewhere, or I missed my pickup, or if something happened, you know, that might be useful. Um, they did that in Knoxville, Tennessee, in their automated call system, and that having that so-called emergency push a number really helped things out. So I just wanted to bring that up, but I have been so satisfied with the Sun van. Uh, you have excellent drivers overall. They're very friendly. They're very knowledgeable. Um, Dispatch is overworked at times, but um, they usually remain, they're happy. How to say, they don't sign, they don't sound that like they are PO'd, just because you have a problem or you called in with the situation. Overall, a pretty good service. And of course, being free obviously helps, especially our seniors and the underprivileged. Of course, it does. Um, let us hope that um, free will be able to remain for long enough, or hopefully permanently. But you know, um, with inflation and problems, that may or may not happen. But it's a good service overall. I'm thrilled with it.
Well, Mr.
And
Rotelo, I just want to say thank you. I am the dispatch and scheduling manager over at Sunvan. So I would like to thank you for complimenting my dispatchers. They do the best that they can. So we always appreciate
Absolutely.
that kind of feedback when it comes to our dispatch center, because they handle a lot. And I'm sure Sean can, touch in. We are hoping to implement sometime down the road, an option tree to where you can reach dispatch right away, during those times. If you ever get stuck or something like that.
Yeah, that was all great feedback. Yeah, thank you, Joseph.
All right, well, we have reached our time. Thank you guys all for being here with us today. Again, the links that were in the chat, you can go there. This recording will be up tomorrow. And of course, we have so much different information, and the survey again, it's really important to gather everyone's feedback like that. So yeah, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you to our ASL interpreters too, Sarah and Cindy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good day, y'all.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.